The Copra King. The Salco brothers were prominent in the entertainment business when I knew Raymond Burr. Sidney was a director, and Irving and Lester were agents. Lester, the smoothest, represented Raymond. Lester loved to tell the story of how Raymond became TV's Perry Mason. When the CBS brass were trying to cast the title role, Lester made a deal for Ray to test for the part of Hamilton Berger, the DA. In the agreement, Lester stipulated that they also test Raymond for the lead role, and they agreed half-heartedly. He had been in B-movies for some time, and sometimes played heavies, notably The Murderous Husband in Rear Window, 1954. Understandably, author Earl Stanley Gardner had final approval of who was to play Perry Mason. As Lester told it, he snuck into the projection booth the day the tests were being run for Gardner and the producers, and bribed the projectionist to put Raymond's Perry Mason test up first. Gardner took one look, said, "That's him," and walked out of the screening room. Unfortunately, for the producers, they had no deal with Raymond to play Mason, only the DA. Lester Salco and Ray cleaned up on them. Eventually, Ray was able to buy an island in the Azores, where his business interests supported most of the population, and also a property in Fiji. In the early 60s, my father-in-law, Bob Lewis, had become friendly with his employer, Nick. When his son decided to go into show business, Bob drove him and his mother to L.A. They dropped in on us for a brief visit, I guess because I had just started producing and the young man wanted to be an actor. His name was Robert Benavides, and coincidentally, he later became Raymond Burr's close friend and business partner. We renewed our acquaintance when I was hired as the supervising producer of Ironside, which Raymond starred in for 8 years after Perry Mason. Ironside was enormously popular all over the world, as was Raymond, especially in Israel, for some reason. The Israelis may have thought Raymond was Jewish. One season, I produced Longstreet, which was an opposite Ironside, and we got killed in the ratings. Ironside was in its 6th year when Universal and NBC decided they wanted to renew it, but Raymond's contract was about to expire. I can just see the gleam in Lester Salco's eye as he renegotiated Raymond's deal. He wound up with a firm 2-year commitment, unheard of at the time, and substantial fringe benefits. One of the fringes was a promise to develop a new series for Raymond, to be filmed in Fiji, where he owned a copra, the meat of coconuts, plantation, and had a good deal of influence. I'm sure neither of the studio nor the network had the slightest idea of ever producing a weekly dramatic series in Fiji, even with Raymond Burr. At the time, the main artery, the Queen's Highway, was a 2-lane dirt road that bisected the big island and routinely flooded in the persistent rains. But they played along, and to humor Raymond, they sent 5 or 6 of us to Fiji for a 2-week location trip, at no small expense. It was a glorious adventure, and because of Ray's celebrity, we were treated everywhere like royalty, including at the residence of the first Fijian Prime Minister. The influential business community, which controlled the politics and economy, was made up of Indian immigrants. The Fijians were second-class citizens, like the Maoris in New Zealand, the Australian Aborigines, and our own Native Americans. We traveled in old station wagons, our lively group escorted by a genial Fijian employee of Ray's, whom everyone called Johnny. Raymond joined us about halfway through our extensive tour, and from then on, he himself was our guide, greeting people on the streets in Suva and in villages like the visiting dignitary he most certainly was. For several weeks after our return, I worked on a comprehensive Bible for the new show, Raymond Burr in Fiji, and hired a couple of other writers, I think Jimmy Sangster was one, to develop storylines. Not unexpectedly, that was the end of that. Ray's contract gave him every Thursday off, and in addition, he was sometimes absent because of ill health or other obligations. Since he was literally the name of the game, that presented difficulties. Naturally, we shot around him as much as possible, and we used an excellent photo double who, strangely enough, looked like Raymond from the back and in partial profile. We'd arranged scenes to be shot over Ironside's shoulder, even across his temple, and got as much coverage as we could. Then, when Raymond was available again, we'd shoot all his medium shots and close-ups against a wild wall, which could be redecorated and moved about as needed. I'd used the same technique before on the Virginian, when its star, James Drury, occasionally and apologetically disappeared. It's amazing how we got away with it. During my Ironside tenure, I had occasion to meet with Raymond from time to time to discuss script or production problems. Our discussions took place in Ray's dressing room, on the Ironside set, in a back booth at Musso and Frank, the oldest restaurant in Hollywood, or at Raymond's sprawling home nearby, where he cultivated commercial orchids and fabulous Mai Tais. Raymond was a robust drinker, and I was not. After the third Mai Tai, I usually agreed to everything. Raymond was an imposing man, much larger in life than either Perry Mason or Robert Ironside. Handsome, bright, urbane, witty. I'd like to have known him better. After Ironside, he starred in a series of Perry Mason TV movies, among other things. In spite of his failing health, Ray's death was a shock. His memorial service was held at the Pasadena Playhouse, which was filled with friends, co-workers, fellow actors, executives, and agents. Of course, Bob Benavides was there. He'd arranged everything with impeccable taste. People spoke fondly and tenderly about Raymond. Some honored him with whimsy. And at the end, there was a lone bagpipe, playing a liquid dirge, which faded away into the distance until there was silence and not a dry eye in the house.